Hey everybody, how's it going? I hope you're well and your revision is going smoothly. Okay, so what have I put together for you today? Well, I thought I would do something on application skills, particularly focusing on paper 2, but the principles I think are, I hope, useful for tackling any paper. So, alright, let's crack on with some AO2. Okay, so I will be talking through a few different examples of application questions and talking generally about how I approach them. But before we do that, I think it sort of makes sense just to make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to what is application. So for me, application is about going beyond just reciting stuff. It's more than just learning stuff off by heart, learning theories, learning keywords. It's about using that knowledge to actually explain, to interpret, or to analyse new situations, like the scenarios that you get in the exams. What do AQA have to say about it? Well, from their website, you know that there are 3 different assessment objectives. An application is AO2, not that it really matters what they call it, but it's about applying your knowledge and understanding of scientific ideas, processes, techniques and procedures in both the theoretical and practical context, and including with data. So it's going beyond just applying a theory to a STEM. It's also about your research methods. Most of that is going to be application. So just bear that in mind. How do I actually write application? Well, I've been doing this a long time and I've put a lot of thought into how to sort of maybe guide the way that you do application, and I've come up with a few sort of key principles. I know this sounds very, very grand, but I am doing this tongue-in-cheek. So I would advise that you make your application clear in the same way that you would signpost your evaluation using phrases like, one strength of this theory is, or, critics of this study have highlighted, that sort of language. You do a similar thing with your application in terms of signposting it by using the language in the STEM, using quotes, using the names that are given to you in the scenarios. I'd also advise that you try to use reasoning in your application. So by that I mean that you go beyond just literally what's in the STEM. You make some inferences. You try to reason, and you try to make some judgments and use language like, presumably this would happen, or possibly this is what they're getting at. Yeah? To go beyond literally just what's in the STEM. I'd also advise that you make sure that your application is accurate. So you can use quotes from the STEM, you can talk about the right people, but unless you're actually using the right knowledge and you're selecting the right material to apply to the STEM and explain the behaviour, it's not going to get you little credit, if any, to be honest. Okay, so clear, maybe some reasoning, making sure it's accurate, and I would also advise that you ensure your application is practical. So make sure it's appropriate for the context, make sure that it is an appropriate suggestion that could practically actually be carried out. I remember a few years ago there was a biological rhythms question, a sleep question on, I think her name was Julia, and a baby, and there were some candidates suggesting that you could leave the baby in the cupboard to help reset its sleep-wake cycle because it would be dark. That isn't practical, is it? We can't really do that. So there you go. You're going to make sure your application is clear, you've got some reasoning, it's accurate, and it's practical. I've put those 4 things together there. It'd be great if they made some kind of like mnemonic or acronym or something. Maybe you can help me out with that. But there you go. Okay, so here is an example. I'll give you a minute to read it, and there's no reason this couldn't be an interactive experience. So you could pause the video, give it a go, and then come back and I will talk through what I would do and show you my response. So I'll give you a chance to do that if you like. And here we go. All right, so we've got James, who has been given a detention, couldn't go to art club, he's angry, he slammed the door, he's got in trouble for it basically. Okay, and what we're asked to do is use the psychodynamic approach, or the concepts in that approach, to explain his behaviour. So hopefully what jumps out for you is defence mechanisms and or the role of the id from that approach. Okay, so let's have a little look. So I've said, James's behaviour can be explained in terms of defence mechanisms, which are protective strategies deployed by the ego when overwhelmed. When James was angry, the true target of this was presumably his teacher, who's told him off for talking. So what I'm doing there is I'm introducing the relevant knowledge, so that's my accuracy, and I am making it clear that I've applied it to the scenario by using the name James and talking about teacher. I've reasoned there as well because I'm saying the target was presumably the teacher. And then I'm going to go on to say, however, he couldn't have taken that anger out towards the teacher. He can't attack the teacher. So he's had to redirect that towards a more appropriate substitute, which is the door. So So I'm explaining how the idea of displacement works in the context of the scenario. My specialist terminology there, my accuracy is displacement, that's called. And I'm talking about how that fits in with the conflict that would occur with the id, and the ego would have to resolve that conflict. So his id might have wanted to attack the teacher. Again, I'm reasoning and going beyond just literally quoting the stem there. Okay, and talking again about how the superego would be doing its bits and pieces as well there. Okay, and then I'm going to go on a little bit further and engage with the rest of the stem. So I'm going to say, when in the office with the head of house, James claims that he was not talking. Presumably, he is finding this difficult to accept, and his actions have led to him being in further trouble. Well, I'm using the idea of defense mechanisms again there, and again, using language like presumably, I'm reasoning, I'm going beyond just literally quoting what's in the stem and expecting the examiner to understand why I'm using the knowledge that I'm using. So there I'm bringing in the idea of denial. Okay, so I've tried to make it clear, I've tried to reason, I've tried to select knowledge and use knowledge accurately and practical where possible. Okay, so this time we are going to look at a biopsychology question, and we've got Jana's uncle who suffered a stroke, and we are here asked to describe the likely effects on Jana's uncle. So again, I'll give you a chance, if you want to make this a bit more interactive, chance to pause the video, and then you can come back in a second when you've given it a go. Okay, right, let's do it. So again, bearing these principles in mind, let's work our way through. So Wernicke's area, what does it do? What are the likely effects? So the focus here is on the effect. So Wernicke's area is responsible for comprehension of language. So I've selected and explained my knowledge accurately there. Damage to this area would therefore impair Jana's uncle's ability to understand words and respond to speech. So that's my knowledge, and I've applied it clearly using the language of the stem there, Jana's uncle. Okay, but I'm going to go beyond that, and I'm going to try to reason a little bit, talk in the hypothetical, and give some practical examples of what he might struggle with. So, for example, he may produce nonsense words or may not be able to carry out an instruction when asked. Okay? And then I'm going to carry on, and I'm going to deal with the rest of the information in the stem there, which is the somatosensory cortex. I'm going to use my knowledge accurately. I'm going to say that the somatosensory cortex is responsible for processing sensory information such as pressure, pain and temperature on the right side of the body. And I know that because it says that the left hemisphere was damaged. And with the motor cortex, with the somatosensory cortex, remember you've got that crossing over. It's called contralateral processing, that crossing over of responsibility for areas of the body. Okay, so Jana's uncle is likely to experience abnormal sensations down his right side. Sure, but I'm going to go a little bit beyond that and give some practical examples here. For example, he may feel cold or like something is touching or pinching him. Okay, so again, practical. All right, this time we're going to do a little bit of research methods. So, same thing, if you like, you can pause the video. Give you a chance now to do that. All right, let's crack on. So, we've got an experiment that is looking at the effects of fruit on problem solving. They're looking at blueberries. And we are going to be solving some mathematical puzzles, basically seeing if blueberries help us to solve puzzles by the look of it. The question for us is, explain how a pilot study could be carried out by the psychologist and why it's useful in this case. So here we're breaking it down and we're thinking about how would the pilot study work, or what would you do in the pilot study, and why would that help? Why would that be useful? Okay, so here's my response. A pilot study is a small-scale trial run to test out a study before committing the time and resources. So again, I'm selecting and using my knowledge there, and I need to now link it into the STEM. The psychologist could recruit a couple of participants for each condition from a local college. Okay, she'd need to find or create 10 puzzles to test out and write some instructions for them. So that's how she would do this pilot study. So if she's going to use some puzzles, she needs to get the puzzles and test them. Why is this useful or important? This is important because she may find that the puzzles are too hard or they take too long. Using 10 may even be too many for people to maintain concentration. So I'm specifically linking it to the STEM there. I'm talking about puzzles and why it's important to test them. And I've used the fact that there were 10 and I've reasoned. I've gone beyond just literally quoting the idea that they're puzzles. And I'm saying, well, actually, she's using 10. Is that a good idea? Is that going to be too many? Okay, any that are not appropriate could be removed before the real study. So again, what I'm doing there is I'm explaining why doing that pilot study would be quite useful or helpful. She could test whether participants are happy to eat 100 grams of blueberries, which may be quite a lot in one go, or not enough to have an effect. So again, I'm using specifically what she's doing from the STEM, and I'm thinking about what she's trying to investigate as well there. Furthermore, she'll want to make sure that 30 minutes is a good delay. It may be too long and people may get bored. Yeah? Okay. Just a suggestion. And if you're feeling like you need to practice your research methods a bit more, and we all probably do, let's face it, then you can do it with the sponsor of today's video, me. I've put together, it's available now on Amazon, I'll put the link in the description, I've put together a book of research methods exam style practice questions for you. They come with my suggested answers that I've written, and it's all sort of, each page is a STEM, a bit like what you'd see in the exam, and then it comes with a mix of research methods questions to test your knowledge and application skills. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. Let's crack on with the video. Thank you. Okay, so we'll do one more, and we'll look at a more sort of data-y example here, another research methods thing. So here we've got two therapies that are being tested with patients with moderate symptoms versus patients with mild symptoms. And we're asked to explain what the chart shows about the effectiveness of the therapy. So again, if you want to pause the video and give it a go, I'll give you the chance now to do that. Otherwise, we'll just carry on. Okay, so what does it show? So here's my response. I think when you get a chart that looks a bit like this, it's really important that you look at it in two different ways, or in multiple ways, in terms of what possible comparisons are there. So looking at the chart there on the right, I could compare the left bars with the right bars, and I could say drug therapy looks pretty effective for both cases, but it's not as effective as the talking therapy is, because that white bar on the right-hand side is the highest. Yeah, so comparing the left half with the right half. But I need to do more than that, because there's more going on. So I also need to look at the grey bars and compare them to the white bars. Yeah, so there's two different ways there, two directions that I could draw comparisons. So this is my response. The chart suggests that drug therapy was of similar effectiveness for patients, regardless of whether they had mild or moderate symptoms. Yeah, so the bars are about the same height, aren't they? However, it's not as effective for patients with mild symptoms as talking therapy. So that's there looking at the white bars. So the white bar for talking therapy is quite a bit higher than the white bar for drug therapy. Yeah. So I've said that had the highest improvement score overall. However, the chart shows that talking therapy did little to improve symptoms for moderate sufferers. So that's the little grey bar, C, which suggests that the type of therapy that will work best may depend on symptoms. Those with moderate may be best with drugs, whilst those with mild may be best with talking therapy. So that at the end there, I'm trying to go a little bit beyond. Again, I've talked a lot about reasoning and not just literally quoting what's in the STEM. Trying to go a little bit beyond what's there and try to think about, okay, but what conclusions do we actually draw from this? What does it actually mean? Yeah, so maybe the type of therapy that you want to do would depend on how severe your symptoms are. Yeah? Okay, I'm not just saying like this bar is higher than this bar is lower than this bar, yeah? All right, that's that. Okay, well, that was me going through some application questions with a paper 2 context. I hope that was useful for you. If you did have a go, then I hope that went well for you. Thanks very much for listening. Let me know if you've got any questions or comments down below. Otherwise, I hope you all have a fantastic day. Thanks very much, and I'll see you again on another video.